To understand what the future holds, you need to look at the past. And in the past, Sonic was never camera shy. Whether it was his moves like Michael in his first commercial, or his 4 successful television series, or his autumn struts in the City of Dreams, not to mention the games that defined the childhood of generations. No matter where he goes, or where he is, or what he's on, Sonic always finds an audience. As technology evolved, the spotlight shined wider. Pixels became polygons. Cutscenes became CGI featurettes. Sonic became a storyteller, for better or worse. But there's always been one platform he never had the chance to conquer. Until now. Years of discussion, development, and delays have led to this. The talent is at the top of their game. The team took notice of critical reception and took the time to get it right. But the fandom is more fractured and feverish than ever. The classic appetite has been satisfied, the modern delegation longing for a taste. Now, a newcomer enters, then re-enters, in an attempt to recapture Sonic's cultural zenith, the fans who fell by the wayside, and a new generation of followers. Failure finds the future of the franchise in doubt. Success sends new life, new opportunities, and new questions on the next step. The long journey to the Sonic movie is over. The only thing left to wonder is, was the path less traveled a roadmap to success? From TSSZ News headquarters to around the world at sonic speed, this is The Final. With Lou Balzani and Noah Copeland, I'm Tristan Oliver, and welcome on an evening that is sure to be historic for the Sonic franchise. Let's get right to the box office numbers. We can tell you that the Sonic movie, our projections are now at an at least estimation $55 million over Friday to Sunday for the Sonic movie. The 4-day estimated number is now, according to our projections, at $65 million at least. We have some new projections coming in on tonight, and according to the experts at Box Office Theory, the Sonic movie tonight is expected to make at least $22 million. If the Sonic movie crosses the $54.3 million threshold tomorrow, it will be the #1 biggest box office opening for a video game adaptation ever. It will beat Detective Pikachu. That is likely to happen on Monday no matter what. Currently, the sky is the limit, and now there are a couple of projections that put the opening weekend for the Sonic movie in the $70 million range at least. Again, the bulletin, $22 million now expected for Saturday ticket sales for the Sonic movie. That's according to the experts at Box Office Theory. They look and they analyze the ticket sales that come in hour by hour, minute by minute, just as we have done. And you can imagine a lot of the stars are talking about this great success, this unexpected success for the movie. You may remember the initial projections were 40 million, mid-40s. Ben Schwartz tweeted earlier today, "I wish I could go to every theater and thank every single one of you." He has since tweeted about the A cinema score that the movie's that the movie has received, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Tika Sumpter, also one of the film stars, popped onto Twitter today saying, quote, "Wow, I want to hug each one of you. Your support means the most." And Aaron Weber, who has been largely silent on Twitter the past few months, has said, quote, "The Sonic movie is off to an amazing start, and we hope everyone has a wonderful time watching it. The Sonic community is one of the most passionate and supportive in the world, and we couldn't be more thankful for each and every one of you." So, gentlemen, I think we were probably anticipating to have a very different conversation about this movie about a year ago when the first trailer dropped. You both have seen it. I have not. But these box office numbers, I mean, I don't use the word historic very often, but this is something special, guys. Absolutely. I can't believe this right now.
This is a really big deal for sure. Good evening, everybody. No one really expected this movie, I think, to come out of the gates the way it has and to explode financially the way that it has. We are definitely very fortunate in that regard as a community to see the property and the IP succeeding so well out in the mainstream, and it really doesn't get much more mainstream than this. We're talking a wide release, internationally available film, and it's a really exciting moment for the community, a testament, I think, to how much the community is supporting it in the wake of the redesign and in the wake of all of the really positive buzz that it's been getting.
Counter opinion, I actually thought from day one it was going to be a huge success, and that is what scared me the most. Is that I thought it was going to be bad and a terrible misrepresentation of Sonic, but it was going to be a huge success, so that was going to send the message that, oh, this is what we want. But then and when I saw that first trailer with Horrible Sonic, I'm like, there it is. But then the redesign happened, and I think that only helped its success.
And I think, Lou, you bring up something very interesting because we haven't even factored in the international box office yet. This is all domestic right now. And there is a very real chance that when this is all said and done on Monday, that the Sonic movie will have netted sales of over, if not well over, $100 million in its first weekend. It is almost certainly going to dethrone Detective Pikachu in terms of domestic box office. It's not going to internationally. The only other film right now so far this year that has been competitive, and yes, it's a very early year, is the new Bad Boys movie. And in fact, Sonic has a chance of dethroning Bad Boys as the top opener of the year so far.
Let's do that. Yeah, I'm okay with that.
You're okay with it. Just for reference, Bad Boy opened over Martin Luther King Jr. weekend, $59 million 3-day and $73 million 4-day. That $59 million number has a chance, I think, of being overtaken. But another little point that I want to point out here, the last time a SEGA property had this kind of success, or the launch of one, I should say, was the launch of the Dreamcast.
Wow.
Adjusted for inflation, the Dreamcast launch made over $151 million. It's probably not going to get to $150 million this weekend, but it's going to get reasonably close, I think maybe 110, 120. And then, because of how this new release has panned out, you may remember, this was supposed to be out in November. In February, now there is a decent number of children are off school next week. There is an expectation in some of the observer circles, particularly on Box Office Theory, that the Sonic movie may not lose a lot of steam going into next week and into next weekend. There is not a tremendous amount of competition for this movie until the beginning of March. This movie could be number one at the box office for a month, which is incredible to think of.
Which would not have happened if it had done it in November. It actually worked to their advantage in so many ways.
Absolutely. I mean, we can talk about the redesign. I'm sure we will momentarily. We can talk about the timing. But really, that delay did so much more good for the success of this film than I think anything could have. A lot has changed in the past 6 months with this film. We will get to all of it soon. Let's go and talk now about... We talked about how this movie has sold. Let's talk about how this film has been received with audiences. And we have, in fact, some numbers for the critical reviews that have come up for the Sonic movie. And those reviews you can see right at the top an A Cinema Score. Now, Cinema Score has been in this business for over 40 years. They are the top standard, the gold standard for polling audiences in movie theaters across the country. You also see this is the latest number for Rotten Tomatoes, a 95% audience approval. Now, the critic ratings, there was a point where the Sonic movie was in the low 70s, and it looked like it had a chance to overtake Pikachu there and Angry Birds there. Doesn't look like that's going to really happen now. The Metacritic average, they only look at papers and major media organizations, not bloggers or anything like that. So that number is obviously going to be lower. The really interesting thing about this, guys, and I know both of you have seen this film, is audiences are not really caring about what the critics are saying about this film at all.
That certainly seems to be the case, and you talk to so many fans, so many people who have seen the movie, and they completely disregard, more or less, the critical reaction to it. Like we saw, it was in the low 60s on Rotten Tomatoes, mid 40s on Metacritic. Really not necessarily a criticky sort of movie. When you think about, especially in terms of the realm of like kids movies or PG type of fare, in order to really be a critical success in that regard with you know, people who make it to Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic, etc., you're generally looking at sort of different content. The sort of really lightweight, fun adventure films typically don't see as much happy critical press as some sort of more hard-hitting, deeper themed something like most of Pixar's output comes to mind, where there's really deep theming and there's a much more sort of active narrative. So this sort of lightweight action comedy sort of adventure film, not necessarily critic fare, and I think that most of the community and most of the fans of this film understand that, and they're willing to sort of accept it as the sort of fun ride that it is, and clearly the box office numbers reflect that.
Yeah, and I think that the general public also feels some degree of ownership of it because of the redesign. They wanted to like that because they feel like they had some part in it.
I think that's a fair thing to deduce from it. I mean, because the idea that a major media company actually listened to their customers and listened to fans about how a titular character should look. I think there is a strong sentiment in this community that kind of behavior should be rewarded, certainly. But if you remember from the first trailer, that was not the only problem with this movie. There were other problems. It just so happened that the way Sonic looked in April when the first trailer came out was the most glaring and got the most attention. Those problems do not appear to have necessarily been, I don't want to say fixed, because you can't really fix something after something is shot and you end production, go into post-production, but it just doesn't seem like that really matters. People are very, particularly fans, and this is a very, very particular fan base, as all of us know, but it seems like they're willing to sort of forgive some of, dare I say, this, you know, some of the issues with stories, some of, you know, the holes that are in some of the plot and continuity and things like that, just so that they can see Tyson's great work, seeing all of the Easter eggs, seeing the credit scene that we'll talk about a little bit later. There's a lot of forgiveness happening right now, not just with this community, but with general audiences who, I kind of agree with you, Noah. I don't think the design needed to change from the original design for this movie to have been successful. I don't think it would have been $60 or $70 million opening weekend successful, but I think it would have been in Paramount's original expectations, which were like mid-40s. So what do y'all think about that?
Yeah, so I think, I don't know that I'm 100% on that one. My gut is there was so much sort of vitriol around the original design. If they kept it, and if especially the fan base and the community had a sense that, oh, they're not listening, oh, they're still going with this old design for whatever reason, fairly or not, then I think all of what people may see as problems with this film now would have been exacerbated because that goodwill of the redesign isn't there. I think, and this is just my opinion, I think there is some degree of people willing to give the film a little more rope because of the redesign, because there's a more amiable and attractive design for Sonic in, front and center in this whole thing, and the fact that they took so much time to change that design, that definitely, I think, is leading people to gloss over some of its flaws a little more because they feel so much better about that part of the movie, and I think that's helping
human beings aren't rational or objective, generally speaking. We're very, we don't sit down and go judge things like on merit alone. There's so many factors that affect somebody's opinion. Goodwill will make a bad film more forgiven any day. A sense of ownership that you're involved will make you be much more forgiving than something you had nothing to do with. Yeah, I definitely think you're onto something there, Lou.
A member of our chat has actually just pointed out when Jim Carrey got mocked for having a role in the Sonic movie, he said it was the Grammys. I do remember this vividly. It was, if I'm not mistaken, last year's Golden Globes.
Yes.
Jim Carrey was in attendance, and Carrey sort of got a lot of chuckles out of the audience for being involved with the Sonic movie, and that was kind of like the first indication that maybe it kind of felt like something wasn't quite right with what was happening here. That one of the film stars would just openly kind of let himself be mocked like that, and goodness, we have just come quite a long way. I mean, this is just, it's so hard for me, and I admit I have not seen this film yet, so for various reasons, but I mean, Lou, you wrote the review. It's on TSSZnews.com right now. You felt it a very middle-of-the-road film in terms of its actual score, but it's like you've been saying, this is a film that knows exactly the audience that it is catering to. It is just, and it plays to that audience so very well. Not both the new audiences that it's trying to attract, the old fans like all of us here tonight who either still follow the franchise or are looking to get reeled back in a bit. Would you say, independent of your score, independent of your review, that the film is successful in that regard?
Yes. So I think the biggest thing to sort of keep in mind, regardless of what you may think of it as an artistic piece or as an actual film production, there's no denying that it is very much aware of who will be in those seats watching this movie. There's definitely a concerted effort to sort of cater this primarily toward younger viewers, families, those who would be seeing it on a weekend when there's not much other family fare in the theater. Again, the February release works to its advantage there. But it also does, I think, a pretty good job, all things considered, of maintaining knowledge of the fact that there will be people in the theaters who have played every single game in this franchise, who know every single reference in and out, and it plays to that side of it just enough to get away with it with everyone having a smile on their face. It's not easy to work those kinds of references and to work that level of dedication to the source material into a huge Hollywood production like this where so many people are involved, fans and not. So to see that level of sort of deftness of juggling all these balls in the air in terms of who the movie's for and who's watching it is absolutely commendable, regardless of whether or not you think it's a good movie or not.
And I think another major reason that the Sonic movie has seen such an enormous success has been the film's marketing campaign since really November, December. I work in New York. There have been billboards everywhere in Times Square, at the Javits Center where they hold New York Comic Con. In Los Angeles, there are billboards aplenty. There's digital. I've seen a ton of YouTube ads, digital ads. The budget for the film is estimated to be between $87 and $95 million, but you also have to add tens of millions of dollars to the advertising budget for Paramount to sort of break even on this movie, and that's just the way movies are these days. But there's one thing that really a marketing budget can't buy, and that is a real, true passion, not just from the fans who want to support the film, but also the stars who made the film. And as part of that, we learned on Thursday night that several of the stars who were behind the Sonic movie, not Tim Miller, but Jeff Fowler, Tyson Hess, and others, actually snuck in to a Thursday night screening community organized by the Sonic Revolution campaign. Let's take a look at their reaction to that. All right, we are having some technical problems, so apologies for that, but we do have that video. It's coming up, and Lou will tell me in just a moment when they're ready, but this was video that was given to us by a member of Sonic Revolution, Lidice Garcia. She helped organize the Los Angeles campaign. You remember there were two of them, one in Orlando and one in the greater Los Angeles area. And again, this was attended in secret. They came out after the credits. It is up now. Thank you. All right. Let's.
This is the only cue they ever do in film.
What's your favorite Easter egg?
Oh, two great ones. SEGA, what's your favorite Easter egg?
The Sonic drawing, I think. We had a lot of fun with that one, for sure.
And how does the CG work?
Oh, it's easy. It's a piece of cake. It's very cheap. It's very fast. It's very easy. But yeah, you guys think Sonic looked good? Are you happy with that? Hey, people are changing it!
Amazing. Well, thank you guys so much for having us. It means so much. This is Thursday night. This is the first time anybody can see
You guys are the super
the
fans.
movie.
We appreciate it.
Really appreciate it. Again, Tyson, Jeff, Pat, Toby, I'm Ben.
And that is just the kind of marketing that you can't buy for somebody like Jeff Fowler, somebody like Tyson, who is beloved in this community, like Pat Casey, I believe Toby Asher was there as well. For all of those individuals to have a one-on-one experience, like on top of what has just been a gangbusters marketing campaign, like Jim Carrey, Ben Schwartz. Yes, Ben Schwartz was there as well. I forgot to mention that. It's just insane, guys. Like, I have never seen anything like this outside of maybe a Comic-Con.
Yeah, it's been absolutely nuts. We have so much engagement from the actual creative team behind the movie, which is great to see because a lot of people in those roles will do their required promotional stuff and they won't really hype it up beyond what they're contractually obligated to, and that'll be that. But to see all of the, we'll say, creative figureheads making the rounds, really hyping this up on social media, demonstrating their passion for the brand and for what they've created, goes a long way in terms of both, obviously, generating good buzz for the movie, but in terms of sort of also convincing people and sort of showing the general public that they are as passionate about the project as you would be if you were in their position. And it's refreshing to see that, that passion, that energy, that dedication in front of live audiences who are clearly very receptive.
And Noah, how about you? I mean, because you're not on the coast. You are deep in the heart of Texas, I suppose. I'm curious if you had seen anything on your end in terms of the marketing for the Sonic movie, or has it been mostly word of mouth?
I haven't seen any sort of billboards or anything where I'm at. In fact, because I saw the movie on Thursday night, I think the theater I was at was technically didn't have anything out until the day, Friday, Valentine's Day, the day it was actually supposed to come out. So yeah, it was rather barren. I will say this though, this was really cool. The theater I was at as I was in line getting popcorn, I see parents walking with their child, and their child is dressed as Sonic, just full costume.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Which is pretty adorable and absolute heartwarming.
And I think that's the thing, like, even in spots where there weren't billboards plastered all over the place, you knew there was a built-in audience, because this is a franchise that has been around for almost 30 years, has fans who have played the original, who now have young children of their own, can really use that as an introductory starting point. And so it's like, I'm not even sure they needed to plaster Times Square or Los Angeles in tons of ads. So here's the thing.
Because even though there were no billboards or ads where I was at, every new trailer come out, everyone at my work was talking about it all the time. They've been talking about it since then it's come out. So yeah, it's definitely on a lot of people's minds, regardless of the advertising.
So here's my question. Do we think that Paramount and the marketing department there, and at SEGA for that matter, would have put as much muscle as they did into this movie if they thought that this was going to bomb, which it looked like it was going to right up to November?
Absolutely not. So one of the things that I think is important to remember about movie studios is, as productions come together, you know, they are well aware of what the product looks like well ahead of time. So as Final Cut comes together, as the project coalesces, the studio knows if they're going to be able to recoup what they've spent on this, if the public's going to engage with it. They have very elaborate ways of tracking all this. So as it came together, they must have seen that there's enough positivity here and that the final product is high enough quality for them to justify a big marketing spend on it. Otherwise, it would be like any other trash movie would be, and they would just sort of dump it early in the year. Now, I mean, the timing's a little coincidental in this case, but they would dump it early in the year or just sort of put it out there with minimal marketing and minimal expectations and let it go, recoup as much as they could. Clearly not the case here, because the internet and the world at large have been bombarded with ads for this movie, clearly showing confidence in the product. And if it wasn't as wide-reaching as it was, like T mentioned, with generations of people seeing this, they wouldn't put the muscle behind it that they have.
Well, I mean, yes, Noah, go ahead.
I think when a movie, the ironic thing, I think when something is expected to bring in a lot of people, that's the best time to advertise for it. Like, if you know nobody's going to see it, there's just no point in advertising. If you know a lot of people are going to go anyway, ironically, it's the train already has momentum and it's moving, so you get to really just lean into it and dive into it. So I think a lot of people would have seen it without the Times Square, but they're like, yo, we got something good here.
And
let's milk every last drop out of it.
Exactly, and it's important to realize, because I think people are coming into this with a different sort of angle on it too. If we were still where we were in April when that first trailer dropped, I think people would almost be approaching this sort of like they would something like Cats, where they just want to see for themselves the abomination firsthand, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now they're coming at it not from an angle of, oh, let's go in and make fun of it. They're coming at it from the angle of, oh, I heard this is pretty good, let's go check it out. Much more positive overall buzz, and that's absolutely a good thing.
And again, a reminder of the bulletin at the top of the show. We have learned from experts at Box Office Theory, the Sonic movie is expected to rake in $22 million or more of single-day sales today. That's on top of $18 million Friday and $3 million in Thursday previews. So it's clearly working. And again, this is such a special case because this looked like a Cats level disaster for quite a while. You don't know how a redesign is going to pan out until you actually see it. And obviously, it worked out so well getting Tyson on board, somebody who absolutely knows what he is doing with his work on Sonic Mania and other projects for SEGA, that there is, the community confidence is absolutely there. I don't know that the confidence was there with general audiences. General audiences, as we've talked about, can you know, it's so difficult to to get a second chance at a first impression. And the fact that that has happened here, there are already people in the industry saying that this is going to impact films with other fanatical bases in years to come. And we'll get to that in the future. But right now, let's talk about the people who actually starred in this movie. This was a pretty good cast, guys. Do we all agree? Pretty good cast, I would say.
I would definitely agree.
And Noah's shaking his head too. And one of the things that that you look at when in any good movie role is how somebody prepares for it. Now, Ben Schwartz is playing Sonic for the first time. There was a little bit of ruffling at the onset of this when he was chosen over Roger Craig Smith, who has been the voice of Sonic now in the games now for about a decade, if you can believe it. But Ben Schwartz got his shot, and wait until you see and learn the game that he played in order to prepare for that role. If we have that video and it's working, hopefully, let's take a look at that now.
Method actor or actress. I downloaded Sonic Mania for Nintendo Switch, which was just basically an excuse to play video games. I just played video games for a couple days and it felt like research, which was very exciting. And then in terms of the voice, in my head, when we were trying to figure out the voice, or even when I was doing it for the test with Jeff and Tim, and Neil and Toby, baby, that I wanted it to feel like, because in my head, Sonic is like a kid and he's got all this energy. He can go really fast and he has all this energy, but also he's like a kid growing up. And so I feel like he doesn't know exactly where to put that energy. So not only when he uses his speed to get around, but also the excitement of learning things for the first time and being on Earth and meeting people and stuff like that. So when he talks, which I do often, is like he talks with excitement, he talks fast, and he talks with all this energy and optimism. And I think that's where you find it. So it's kind of my voice, a little bit higher.
I mean, Lou, this is really just, you can really tell that Ben was really excited to have this role.
The passion is infectious. It really is. And that's, again, one of the greatest assets you can have. If someone is genuinely excited about a project, if they are genuinely passionate about what they're working on, they will show it, and that bleeds into everything. It bleeds into the performance, it bleeds into the marketing, it bleeds into the goodwill, it bleeds into the social media. It is infectious, 100%. And to hear him waxing poetic about, Sonic Mania and engaging with the character and finding a route to convey that excitement in a professional way that brings the character to life is so heartwarming and so great to see. He was and is an absolutely phenomenal choice for that voice. I hope he gets to do it again.
Noah, should Ben Schwartz get to voice Sonic again in movies or otherwise?
Yeah, I think he did a very good performance. Good gosh, actually, without the very strong performances from this movie, there would have been a lot less, I think, there. So I think he did an absolutely excellent job, and he will continue to be the voice of movie Sonic in the very inevitable sequel that will happen.
And we'll talk about the prospects of that sequel in a few moments. Another cast member who gave an incredibly strong performance was Jim Carrey. We talked a little earlier about he was sort of self-mocking about what he did in the Sonic movie during the Golden Globes last year. But it turns out he really liked assuming the role of Robotnik in this movie. Here is a minute or so of Jim Carrey talking about assuming the role of Dr. Robotnik.
It's always fun to play a villain, a really good villain. I think there's something especially exciting about the idea of a super genius who has a really deep sense of self-loathing. It's a good comedy explosion that needs to happen, Well, I think friendship is obviously a very valuable commodity. And, so I do love that idea. I love the theme of loneliness and the theme of, this character, my character, being somebody who has been neglected by the world and has chosen to blame the world and want to own the world and control the world. And I think, there's room for evolution in the character. And, I really look forward to, possibly doing another couple of them or something. If that happens, it'd be a real blast to see where he goes, because it's not only the machines that control us from the outside, it'll be the machines that control us from the inside. The nanotechnology. You're talking to a person and they're watching a movie in their retina. It'll be hard to get everybody's attention.
And gentlemen, I think we were all kind of in agreement about this before we even got extended glimpses of the film and got to see it for ourselves. But the 90s Jim Carrey is back, I think, indisputably.
That is, I think, true. I talk about this in the review a little bit. He taps into the manic energy that made him famous, and it is a delight to see. I think my quote was something like, it's a little more yes man than liar liar, in that it's not as like brazenly in your face, and it's not like super insanely over the top and crazy, but that energy, that sense of wackiness and irreverence is there. It is front and center. There's a scene where he sort of dances around his like Freightliner truck lab with choreographed like music and like a light show going on, and that is exactly like no one else could have done it as well as he does, and that totally justifies why he's in this movie and what he's doing.
That's kind of funny. I actually feel like okay, so I've never really been a huge particularly enjoyed Jim Carrey's work before, because I feel like he just does the same thing every time, and it's like, and I really think anyone could do it, but just it's his thing, so he just does it. But I think it's so over the top and a parody of itself that anyone could have done that if you would have said just do the Jim Carrey thing. But who better to do it than Jim Carrey? But I'm clearly in the minority. People love Jim Carrey, and I think that he definitely contributed hugely to the success of this movie. The fact that people associate that sort of Jim Carrey with the 90s, Sonic is from the 90s, just feels right for a lot of people. I think you needed somebody larger than life to step into the shoes of such a monumental character such as Dr. Robotnik. So you needed somebody that was willing to just go all the way and go for it. So I think it actually definitely worked out, despite my feelings of his his work. I really think if you listen, in a weird way, he really did nail the character. It really fit the character in such a way that I can't believe actually makes sense. If you listen to him in interviews like we just did, and him talk about the role, I think he absolutely understands Robotnik. I think he captured the spirit of the character. We've never seen Robotnik, be this zany, wacky, over-the-top kind of guy, but the driving force and motivations for Eggman are 100% true to his character in this film, and I did not expect that to happen, and really surprised me, and I think that aspect of it was incredibly well done.
And that, that's really curious, because I picked up on that too, and at first I was sort of wondering, like, how much of that was intentional, and how much of that did he just sort of luck out and stumble into a route into this that happens to match how the, Robotnik's portrayed in the games. And it turns out, like you were saying, his motivations, his sort of presentation is very much in line with how you would see Eggman motivated in the games, or Robotnik motivated, whatever they do. Spoiler alert, they do call him Eggman at one point, and it's a little forced how they get there, but they drop the line, and of course everyone in the theater is like, he said the thing! So that was fun. And they don't make a huge deal out of it either, which is good. They just sort of like drop the line and keep moving. Everyone in the theater is like, oh my god! I know what that means. But which is a lot of this movie, to be fair.
Because they made it about the need to control and the preference, just the ego behind it. That just, gosh, and it's very much so Game Eggman is very much the classic sort of, I don't know, millionaire evil genius doctor who's like an older gentleman. Where this was almost like the young tech CEO, like the Elon Musk version of Robotnik or something.
It is. Yeah, it's almost like if you gave Elon Musk the mustache that Jim Carrey wears and let him like run around to military generals and be like, "Are you in charge here?" It makes a lot of sense.
And I can't believe how well it worked.
And I think what's really really nice about having Jim Carrey, having James Marsden, having Ben Schwartz is this looks like this was a cast. The chemistry really came together, which is extremely hard to do, especially when you have Ben in a voice booth tracking, not necessarily on location, and the rest of the crew in Vancouver shooting. But this seems like this was a really good group, a group that really liked each other. We see so many times in the tabloid about drama on the set of this, that, or the other thing. There was certainly drama with this film, but it had nothing to do with the cast of characters. Since you guys both watched the film, I mean, did you kind of get that feeling watching the film that the chemistry was there?
Absolutely. And it's one thing I really have to give credit to, and I wanted to make sure that we talked about, was James Marsden in this film. Because remember, he's basically acting against nothing the whole time, because like you said, Ben Schwartz is in a booth. They had a true to size Sonic statue for reference for like effect shots and things. But
they had balls sometimes. He was talking to a ball sometimes. Sometimes nothing.
Just a ball on a stick. And it's to his great credit that he's able to conjure up the sort of easygoing charisma that he has in the film to create that camaraderie with something that didn't exist when he was working on it. So I really wanted to just bring that out in particular. I thought James Marsden did a really great job sort of serving as the easygoing, charismatic foil to Sonic's explosive energy. And that, I think, is sort of the underappreciated glue that holds so much of this project together. I thought he did a really great job.
I think, that their interactions between Sonic and Tom, between Ben Schwartz and James Marsden, felt very genuine and did not feel forced. I think the plot's necessity to put them together feels very forced, and I don't know if we'll get into that or not, but their interactions felt very good. Despite Tom's eyeline not always matching up where the Sonic was rendered. But there is a lot of good chemistry. I think a lot of the comedy came out of just the free-flowingness of it. And I'm really surprised how well it sort of works, considering how pieced together it had to be with Sonic not being there on set.
And gentlemen, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Lou, you said before we went on the air that one of the supporting characters and one of the supporting actors got one of the biggest laughs in the theater.
Yes, that's absolutely true. So I have to get her name, but she
plays Tika Sumpter's sister, and
basically Tom, James Marsden's sister-in-law. Her name is Natasha Rothwell. As I said here, Tom's ever more irate sister-in-law. She gets the biggest laughs of the film, hands down, and she did a great job too. She's not in very many scenes, but she almost steals them when she's in them. It's pretty cool.
Very nice. She's basically like Bernie Mac's character in the first Transformers.
yeah, that's not wrong.
I'm clearly not well versed enough in film to have seen that Transformers film, but I think another person. Oh, Noah, go ahead. Yes.
I'm saying you're okay to have not seen that movie.
Okay. Good to know. Another person who we haven't talked about much in earnest yet, who absolutely deserves a lot of credit for the success, if for no other reason than for listening, is Jeff Fowler. Jeff Fowler, this is his first time directing any movie of any kind, and I suspect he's going to get a lot of phone calls once the final numbers come in for the Sonic movie. But we do have a clip of what his expectations were for the Sonic movie. It'll run about a minute. If it works, let's take a look and listen to what Jeff Fowler had to say in his own words.
It's a character story. It's about telling a very emotional, very relatable story, and it has just something for everyone. Like, I really feel like there's a strong family component to it. Obviously, there's no shortage of action, but I mean, we really were thinking about everyone, and sort of, I think back to being 13 when the game came out, and now, I just turned 40 this year, and I want everything in between. Like I want fans of the original who played that game in 1991 to now be introducing this character to their children, or just to create this whole next generation of fans. And yeah, it's boys and girls, it's teenagers, it's adults. I mean, it really is meant to be for everyone. And I just think we really did something great in terms of the tone and the humor and the action, and it's a big movie with just a lot of laughs and a lot of heart, and I just really think there's something for everyone.
And so, gentlemen, not a bad first time directorial debut for Mr. Fowler, would you say?
That I mean, the numbers don't lie, right? Just looking up a little bit about him, he comes from a visual effects background, so it's clear that the film was in good hands with him in terms of making it work from that angle. Yes, his directorial debut, 41 years old, as it turns out. So it's you're never too old to have a first.
Go for Broke?
What's that?
What about Go for Broke?
Go for Broke, a short film. He was nominated for Academy Award for Best Animated Short Film. That was in 2004. That's called Go for Broke.
Yes, that is correct. My apologies. So this is his, let me clarify what I said. This is his first feature-length directorial debut. Go for Broke indeed was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Animated Short Film. He did not win it. But, I mean, I think the fact that he listened and responded so quickly to what was going to be spiraling almost out of control. There was a very precarious position, if you all remember, in April, May-ish, where like this thing was just going to get out of hand and out of everybody's hands and was just going to be written off no matter what happened. But to have somebody in his position take the reins and give a concrete, we are going to make this right, we are going to change the release date. Obviously, we have done some reporting on the website about the sacrifices that came with making things right in terms of the now defunct MPC Vancouver, but the results are still the results, and I can't think of many directors who would take that kind of initiative. And in fact, if you remember, at the end of 2018, when Tim Miller, who we haven't heard a lot from really since this whole redesign thing was underway, I mean, Tim Miller was very adamant, even in discussions with SEGA, that he felt the way Sonic looked was going to be the best way that he looked in, quote-unquote, our world, the real world, and clearly he got overruled there.
Yeah, I absolutely think that in my mind, my headcanon is that Tim Miller, with his more aggressive personality and more clout in the industry compared to Fowler, kind of dictated the original Sonic design, and Jeff kind of went along with it, but had his doubts about it, but Tim had to convince him otherwise. And then the moment the public responded, Jeff was like, okay, like, see, I think I was kind of right there, Tim. Tim's like, okay, I guess I'm clearly wrong, and went with it. So to me, I almost feel like I don't, in my mind, picture Jeff logging on to Twitter, seeing, or mainstream media in general, seeing the reaction to the bad design and going, "Whoa, I never would have thought this." I bet he was like, "Yeah, okay, I had a feeling. All right, yeah, okay, now I get to do. This is a good platform for me to get what I wanted, which was to make Sonic look more cartoony." That's just my headcanon belief. Anyway, because of how quickly he responded, it almost made it seem like he was waiting for that, like he was just dying for that opportunity. And like you noticed, it was not Jeff Fowler that had been defending the design. It was Tim Miller that was the one defending the design in the press before coming in. So I don't know how any truth that is, but that's my headcanon for sure.
Yeah, I mean, again, we've not heard a ton from Tim Miller.
He's been silent since then.
He really has been. It is almost eerie.
Which is more proof to my theory, I think.
Well, I mean, he has a hit on his hands, whether he wants to admit it or not. But, I mean, with most human beings, I mean, sometimes egos can can be easily bruised, so to speak. I don't want to necessarily think that Tim Miller's ego is bruised, but it's definitely a big W for Jeff Fowler. And again, I would be shocked if he doesn't get some phone calls from some other Hollywood moguls going forward to head up their projects. There is another component to this, and probably
Jeff,
the
can
most...
you direct our Mega Man movie, please, Mr. Jeff?
There is another component, and it's perhaps the most important component to this. And it is, in fact, what does this mean for the games? There have in fact been 2 tie-in campaigns to 2 mobile titles, both headed up by Sega Hardlight, that have movie tie-ins currently, and we were very curious as to how those games have been played or their rankings have been improved in the Apple App Store. So we have a graphic here for the mobile game rankings according to the Apple App Store for both Sonic Forces Speed Battle and Sonic Dash, which are the 2 titles that have the movie tie-ins. And you can see this is the number, the number on the left is from the beginning of the week, and the number on the right is the number their ranking on the App Store in the action category as of about 9 o'clock this evening. And you can see it is a dramatic jump for Sonic Forces Speed Battle, which is still relatively new, at least compared to Sonic Dash, which has been around for like forever. But that's the only thing we've really seen from Sega. And excuse me, this would have been true if the film had released in November as well, because the only tie-in they could have done then was with Mario and Sonic at the Olympics. The fact that there is no immediate tie-in, no new game for fans new and existing to buy surrounding this movie is very puzzling to my mind. Now, Sonic 2, the Sega Ages remaster, is going to come out on Friday, but that's it. Gentlemen, am I the only one that thinks this is a little odd, that maybe Sega probably should have planned around this a little bit better?
Yes and no. So I think... See, that's a tricky one. So obviously there's...
because here's the thing, like, generally games that tie into movies are terrible. Like, almost universally so.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, just from when you think about it, there's a lot of lead time with those kinds of things. And with the production of this sort of becoming fluid and sort of releasing later, I don't know what impact that might have had on the rest of this tie-in stuff. But it seems like there was no plan for any sort of tie-in release at any point in terms of like a standalone release that we would play maybe on consoles, maybe on mobile, I'm not sure. But would that have helped its case? It definitely would have, sort of bolstered it from a brand perspective. That, like the graphics showed, we had so much attention around Speed Battle. Dash obviously got a little boost, and that game's been running strong for years on its own. Certainly, you could argue there's a bit of a missed opportunity, but sort of having the movie sort of stand alone and not oversaturate all these different forms of medium with just Sonic tie-ins to this thing everywhere is maybe okay. I don't really know.
I think Sega was absolutely smart to have nothing here in terms of the mainline Sonic game. For one, I don't think it was guaranteed for this to be a success in terms of reception, right? So it may have been a box office success in terms of let's watch The Abomination if it in worst case scenario. But that doesn't help you sell games. I don't know. I really think that it's smarter to spread it out, right? To sort of, because if the movie would have failed, that doesn't help that game at any point. And in fact, only hurts it because now it associates it with that, because that bad Sonic taste is in everyone's mouth. I think think of like, or if the game had come out around this time and it wasn't stellar, but people are happy about the movie, that makes it look worse. Remember when everyone was high on Sonic Mania and Sonic Forces came out right after it? Everybody's like, nah, just give me Mania. I think they were smart to have nothing there. Just let the movie stand on its own. Who knew how it was going to turn out in terms of whether it was actually quality or not? Just keep your distance from it. So
now let's talk about the future and And we'll get to kind of back to what this means on the game side in a moment, but there's almost certainly going to be a sequel out of this. It was set up in the end credits. And by the way, we are going to talk about a major spoiler right now that's in the credits. So if you have not watched the movie, you may want to put us on mute for a couple of minutes or so, starting about now. So let's talk about the ramifications of those scenes inside the credits. We got a little bit of Tails. Our understanding is Tails got an uproarious applause when people saw it in theaters. It looks like they're setting up for a sequel, maybe with Sonic and Tails. And then where do you think it goes from there?
So that's a great question. So obviously, the sequel has to include Tails, and rightfully so. I think, like you said, at least in my showing, for whatever maybe not as enthusiastic reaction the rest of the movie got, the second Tails popped on screen at the end, the entire theater was on their feet. It was crazy. It's like 20, 25 people, but they're freaking out. They're like, "It's Tails! Oh my god!" Pretty sure, and just in a fun side note, I think they actually brought in his current voice actor from the games. I can't recall who she is off the top of my head.
They in fact did, and in fact, Colleen Shaughnessy did in fact confirm on her Twitter feed she was brought in to voice that one line of dialogue that Tails had.
Okay, that's a little weird. That's a little weird.
How satisfying is that, though? Like, as a fan, if you recognize that voice, you think, "Oh my god, my Tails from the game just made it into the movie."
I did. I was like, yo, as soon as he spoke, I'm like, oh my gosh, his voice is perfect. He sounds just like from the games. It was from the games.
It was.
Like, it feels weird that they would cross over like that, to have Ben Schwartz, Jim Carrey, and then the one for the games for Tails. I don't know.
So that sort of begs the question: is that just going to be like a little Easter egg for them? And then if Tails appears in Sonic 2, inevitably, are they going to cast some more, let's say, Hollywood talent to be the voice? Interesting question. But I think it bodes really well for, from the community. You're going to have so much built-in goodwill immediately out of the gate because, your old buddy Tails is assumedly in the sequel, which there has to be. You have to consider that this is going to happen.
I feel like it also, I can't help but feel poor Roger that Colleen gets to be in it, but Roger's like, sorry, I guess I'll just do the video game. But anyway, enough about that. Yeah, I almost wonder if it was kind of just more last minute than you kind of think, and it was just like, who are we gonna get? We don't have time to cast anyone. Get the person that's already doing Tails real quick. But it was absolutely a great moment to see in the theaters. I think how they're gonna do it going forward is kind of like the games. So Sonic 1 is just Sonic and Eggman. Sonic 2 will introduce Tails. And then I think Sonic 3, they'll have a trilogy, and Sonic 3 will bring in Knuckles, because we've already seen the Echidna Clan early on in the movie as well.
There's a weird and wild theory floating about that I've read on some of the message boards that theorizes that you could maybe see Robotnik and Knuckles team up in the sequel with Sonic and Tails kind of as the forces of good against that, which would be interesting. I think that would
yes, because I think they have to do Shadow in the third one, so that's what okay, Knuckles.
And then there's their tease for the credits of 2, Shadow.
Yes.
But I also think if that happens, and God knows if that's actually going to happen or not, but I think it's a smart way to hedge your bets against only doing a sequel versus potentially doing the trilogy, which I frankly think is way too early to even be thinking about right now. I think the sequel is secured. I think the trilogy...
In a post-Marvel world, it's never too early to be thinking about the 3 next sequels.
Well, let's talk about not Sonic fandom for a minute, because this is an instance where a company listened to fans on a very direct and very consequential element of the movie, and it has turned into a success. And I wonder what the impact is going to be in, say, the MCU or the DCU or those types of movies that have big stars, big names, big production budgets attached to them, as well as big fandoms. Do we believe, and I think we do, and I think they do to some extent, perhaps for good, perhaps not, do we believe fans of other big budget blockbuster franchises are going to feel a little more empowered by the impact and the result that the Sonic movie has had?
Empowered? Yes. Will they be successful or have any outcome from that? Empowerment is tough to say. So I think how I sort of look at this is when you look at sort of the juggernaut like Marvel, they sort of have the fortune, let's say, of being really big and really established now already, and they continue to seem to put out content that their core fan base and the broader movie-going audience continue to like. So I think unless there's some really uproarious thing that happens where they lose the public's goodwill and they have to sort of make amends somehow, I don't think that fans complaining about these sorts of things will have much of an impact there. When you talk about franchises that are maybe just getting off the ground, sort of like Sonic in this medium, if, for example, other franchises, let's say Mega Man, for example, were to make the jump to the big screen for some reason, there may be more of a chance that fans would have a little more sway over the final product if there's something they genuinely don't like, a la this movie. Where it's less established, where they need that goodwill to get it off the ground and to build the franchise, I think there's more of an opportunity for that to happen. But for something really established and already really successful like Marvel, I'm not so sure.
Will they feel empowered and think they'll have more influence? Yes. Will they? No, absolutely not. Fans will not, because it wasn't the fans that caused the change here. I wholeheartedly believe that Paramount was expecting fans to be angry because they're like, hey, they're the crazy fandom, they're too close to this. It was the general public that made their decision. It was the people that haven't bought a Sonic game since '91 that went, what the heck is that monster with the teeth on my screen? This thing was on, like we talk about it because we're the weird Sonic nerds that talk about it regardless of what happens because we're unhealthily attached to this franchise. But, it was the water cooler conversation. It was it's on Entertainment Tonight. It's because it's a Hollywood movie now. It was outside. It permeated outside the circles of both video games and of Sonic and just to the general consensus. Like, I'm not a Mickey Mouse fan, I wouldn't say. Like, I don't have any particular attachment to old Mickey. But I think if you would have shown me a new Mickey movie and he looked hideous, I'd be like, what the heck? That's not how you get Mickey. That doesn't make any sense. So I think it was, if comparing it to Marvel, there are comic book fans that have been unhappy with Marvel movies since day one, and it clearly doesn't matter because the general public really likes it. Spider-Man in particular, there are people that don't like his comic book nerds that don't like his current depiction because it's divorced from Uncle Ben and the things that had a lot of meaning in the comics. But clearly they're laughing all the way to the bank because that doesn't mean anything, because the kind of mindset is you don't cater to the fans because they're ficky and finical and they hate The Last Jedi, even though it's an amazing film. But it's the general public at large that permeates all of that. I think had the influence of the redesign. It wasn't just the fans that were mad. It was the whole world that was like, yo, this Sonic design is disgusting, and that's why the change was made. So I don't think there'll be any sort of lasting effects outside of this.
And it's really interesting because I think that's maybe where you can have any crossroads on this at all. It's when a dedicated fan base like this swells up so loudly, the reactions are primarily heard in like think pieces and Twitter roundup, articles on major media sites where the general public starts to read about it, and then the distaste sort of flows through the ether and becomes sort of, it leaks into the public's consciousness a little more when the outcry is so intense that people start reporting on it. Now, at that point, whether or not it makes a difference, who's to say? You're probably right in that it's probably not that big a deal for most franchises, but if there's anywhere where I think it does make a difference, it's probably there, where if the outcry gets so loud, the general public starts to get wind of it, and maybe that starts to skew their perception a little bit.
Well, see, I think I agree with both of you. I think Marvel's a little bit untouchable, but one franchise that I don't think is untouchable right now is Star Wars. and Star Wars has been on a bit of a decline. And I know that sounds absolutely insane to think about, but I mean, Episode 9 performed to expectations, but didn't exactly make billions and billions of dollars. I believe the offshoot that Star Wars did, I think, made $100 million domestic and was considered a flop. You know, that's where I think I can kind of see some cracks in the armor. To see, you know, fans having a little bit more of an influence, especially because Star Wars feels a little bit rudderless right now. I don't know what they're going to really do after Episode 9, but I also don't. Admittedly, I don't really follow Star Wars that much. But
I really think Episode 9 is actually an example in favor of my argument of that the fans kind of got what they wanted, and it didn't really work out for them. You know, the fanboys were really angry about Last Jedi. So Episode 9 sort of wish-washily kind of backpedaled a little bit of stuff in there and didn't work out and got absolutely terrible critical reviews, despite Last Jedi getting amazing critical reviews. And the box office numbers were lower than expectations. So I don't think it's if anything, that's a lesson to show don't follow the fans.
All right. I'll take your word for it. What do we think this means for the games? Because here's the deal. The last time SEGA tried to make an offshoot franchise, it was Sonic Boom. It was, I want to say 2014. It was supposed to be the year of Sonic, and it flopped. Do we think there is now room with the success of this for, let's say, a movie Sonic offshoot in the future? Or do we think it will fold into modern Sonic somehow?
I think flopped is an understatement there, just to get that on the record. I'm not sure, and I'm kind of split on this. Part of me thinks it would be wise to sort of fold that into the game properties somehow, primarily because of the goodwill that it's sort of been generating, and to somehow craft a playable world around movie Sonic, let's say, maybe exploring what his world looks like relative. I don't know. It gets really confusing, and this whole franchise is just a mess from that perspective. So maybe they don't need to muddy it up anymore. Maybe it's okay if movie Sonic is just movie Sonic and exists in that realm, and that sort of piece of the media puzzle exists as it is. The games take their own direction, and maybe it's okay to sort of keep those siloed, because when they did cross them over last time and they tried to do, cross-media whatever, it was Boom, and the games were an abomination, candidly. So maybe it's okay if they don't.
Will it have any effect on the games? No. I really do not think so.
You really don't?
No, I don't. I think you might get a mobile game. I mean, you've already seen Baby Sonic, and, so maybe you'll get just like you'll get Sonic Dash Movie Edition or something, and like you did with Boom, Sonic Dash 3 or whatever. You would maybe see some of the mobile games, but the mainline console games, no, I don't think they'll be affected at all. I think SEGA and Sonic Team are too proud of what they do to do something like that. I think they like their thing and what they do. If it does have any effects in the games, you won't see those for 10 years. 10 years when maybe somebody else, some other studio gets to make a Sonic game for some reason, and maybe reboots it or something like that. That's when you might see the effects. Sonic will have lightning in that, because reboots are a chance to incorporate elements from reboots are a chance to, if you've got two kind of different versions of something going along, a reboot is a chance to sort of combine holistically interpretations and general public conscious memories of a certain franchise for years. So if we see like a reboot maybe in 10 years, it'd be like, everyone remembers the lightning, so let's put the lightning in there type of thing. But as it stands right now, I don't think it'll have any effect on the games at all.
What about... Oh, Lou, I feel like I cut you off. Yeah.
No, that's great. I was just going to say that's really good insight, actually, I think. It is kind of important to consider that regardless of what the rest of the franchise has sort of looked like in its spin-off forms, Sonic Team's productions have always very much been Sonic Team's productions, for better or worse.
Absolutely.
They don't tend to incorporate any of the elements from the other spin-off stuff, and they sort of tend to ignore that, and they go their own way. Again, whether or not that's good, it sort of depends on the game sometimes. It's awful hit and miss sometimes. But that's probably the best way we should think about them approaching this. Will it impact at least the mainline series? Yeah, probably not.
What about other media? Because here's the thing. Well, I'm thinking TV, I'm thinking animated shorts, etc. Because here's the thing. Paramount's probably going to want to continue to do business with SEGA. Paramount pre-Viacom CBS merger was in a lot of trouble. Post-merger, it's because it has the power of the parent company, not as much. But if this movie had bombed and then it had a couple of other bombs, Paramount would have been in trouble. I get the feeling that Paramount is going to really want to cozy up and really make Sonic not just a franchise brand and improve it for SEGA, but make it one of their own as well. And they have a lot of outlets to do it, including Nickelodeon, including CBS's Saturday morning kids schedule if they wanted to. I will add this, on February 6th last week, Tyson Hess put out sort of a pseudo call for creators that you just think, in his words, quote, I want to see a cartoon from this person. So I really think Tyson's going to continue to be in business with SEGA for quite a long time. And I think there is a possibility they're going to try and extend this franchise maybe in between movies in mass media. Do you think that's viable?
Absolutely. So I definitely think that we're going to see a TV show from this. Bingo. I think there was already talk beforehand. What's the quote from one of the SEGA producers that says, I think the world's ready for another Sonic animated show?
Yes.
I think Tyson's going to make the show, which I'm really happy about, because I don't even think it's up anymore, but a very early video I did about the Sonic movie like 2 years ago, where I said, we don't need this live action movie. What we need is an animated series by Tyson Hess. And I think we're getting that, or something along those lines, for sure. The way I would think it's best to think of it as this Sonic film is the Tim Burton Batman film. And it's time for a Bruce Timm Batman animated series type thing to exist in it. I don't think the Batman animated series would have been, from the 90s, would have been the way it was without the Tim Burton films before it, sort of setting that groundwork. And it is often that you see a movie spawn a sort of kid show from it. I remember the 1998 Godzilla film had a TV show on it that was based on kind of that version of Godzilla, but completely separate from the films. And my hope is that will be the Sonic that I want and really dream of will be in this upcoming TV show. And I'm very excited about that.
That would actually make perfect sense. And again, you're tapping into a lot of community goodwill because everybody loves Tyson. He's done a lot of great work for the franchise already. You've seen even just the small animated shorts he's put out with the Sonic Mania Adventure series and the Team Sonic Racing Overdrive, was it? Whatever the animated 2-off was for that. Everyone loves it. You know, go find someone out there who will openly loathe this, and you're going to have a hard time finding somebody. So to have someone like Tyson, a very visible, a very beloved community figure, heading up a major television media production based on this franchise makes perfect sense. Now, I do think it would be smart to sort of make it more in the animated series route with Batman, because setting any sort of TV show in the actual world of the movie as it exists right now would be bonkers. And, separate continuity, yes,
for sure.
Yes, but great idea, and I would actually be pretty disappointed if they didn't capitalize on it that way.
And I think also because I think this will be an easier sell for Paramount, Viacom, CBS, whoever, to bankroll this on Sega's behalf. I think it'll be a much easier sell on Sega's end if they don't have to necessarily take on any financial risk with this series. I mean, Sega has shown that in the right hands, with the Sonic Boom TV series, they can make some wonderful things. So I think they'd be very eager to maybe try that again and have some semblance of a movie, maybe not necessarily a movie tie-in, but something to ride off its coattails and continue the momentum and sort of bridge the gap between one movie and the second. So we'll see. All right, everybody has waited very, very long for this. We've clearly gone way over what we thought we would, but it is time for the final word. We put the word out on Twitter to give us a micro review of the Sonic movie in 5 words or less. The prize is a $15 gift card code from Fandango so that you can see the movie again if you want, or have somebody else.
Not an Olive Garden gift card?
Not an Olive Garden gift card, Noah. That'll be next week. But we do have 2 winners for the final word, and our first winner is at Sonic Lost World 3, Speed Streak, and he lamented in 5 words, fast, blue, way past cool. And I really liked that. I quite liked that. So that gets a win. And our second winner is Dean Gilbert at Warden Dean. And Dean writes, predictable, but has great performance. So at Warden Dean and at Sonic Lost World 3, you have 24 hours to DM us at TSSZ News on Twitter and claim your prize. Gentlemen, some final thoughts. I think predictable but has great performance is a pretty nice kind of button on this movie. Final thoughts about what we've experienced this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, that really sums it up pretty well. If you want my full thoughts on it, the review's up there on TSSZnews.com. But yeah, thoroughly predictable at every turn. Plot's actually pretty disappointing, all things considered. You see a lot of places, I thought, where they could have had a much more unique and creative concept for it. But as it stands, it's relatively solid family entertainment that hardcore fans obviously are absolutely eating up, and rightfully so. It's a great step in the right direction for this arm of the franchise. It's clearly got the goodwill and the financial strength to warrant more exploration of this concept, and I'm excited to see where it goes from here.
I think that the plot is rather flimsy and pretty weak. I actually think Detective Pikachu has a much better story, even though I don't even care about Pokemon at all.
100% with you there.
That said, it's fun. It's a fun movie. It's a fun road trip movie. Watch it, have a good time. Don't take too hard about it. I'm just very happy it's not a train wreck. I'm just very happy it turned out okay. I think I mentioned this before we went on air with the two of you. I went into the movie just going, just please don't be terrible. Please don't be terrible. And I walked out saying, hey, that wasn't terrible. And I kind of want to see it again just to be like, okay, now that I know it's not terrible, let me just watch it again. But I think it's absolutely fun time. I can't tell anyone to go see it because I know every single person watching this has already seen it. So I'm very excited. Yes. What I'm very excited for is the sequel, because I think that now that a lot of the groundwork is laid and they get to see what worked and they know what not to do, that they are set up for success for a sequel with a very cute fox boy.
I think the theme of this movie and this weekend has been tempered expectations. I think when you're at such a low that the community was with the first trailer, and to know that, yes, this could be a disaster, even with the redesign, because I think most rational fans recognize that one person cannot, and their work cannot save an entire piece of film. It can certainly help significantly, which the redesign did, but there are so many other components to a movie that changing one part of it does not necessarily guarantee success on the other side. But I think what the first trailer did is temper those expectations for the general public, for the community at large, so that when the new trailer came out in November and the marketing build-up to the release on Thursday night into Friday happened, there was a level of things not getting totally out of hand and like out of orbit with this film. The word of mouth has been good because people know who this audience is catering to. People know that this is for everybody. Jeff Fowler put it best in a tweet that he just tweeted right before we went to air, that they were trying to make a Sonic movie for everybody. The core fans that have been at this for, in some cases, close to 30 years, and new audiences. And he thinks he has succeeded. Another thing I just want to point out here, we don't have a graphic for it, but that's okay. Yuji Naka, while we were on the air, just tweeted and said that he is really excited and wants to see the film, which, I mean, if that's not a vote of confidence, I don't know what is. So, again, the headline is that the Sonic movie is expected to overtake Detective Pikachu as the biggest opening weekend for a video game adaptation of all time. That could happen as soon as tomorrow.
That's absolutely insane, because we need to point out, if you've ever looked up a list of the highest grossing media franchises worldwide, Pokemon, the distance between Pokemon and Sonic is staggering on how much more money Pokemon makes. The fact that the movie of Sonic versus Pokemon is this close in the race is absolutely incredible for Sonic.
Absolutely. And the fact that it now looks like there's a realistic chance it can break that $54 million barrier on Sunday instead of Monday is a testament to the strong word of mouth of this film. Again, TSSZ is projecting a $55 million 3-day weekend for the Sonic movie and a 4-day weekend of at least $65 million, and $70 million is on the table. This has been an absolutely incredible, historic weekend for the Sonic franchise. And so, that is the final. And now you are finally up to date. Thanks to Lou and thanks to Noah for hanging out with us on the Series 6 premiere. We tried to get Eddie LeBron in on this. Unfortunately, he came down with the flu, so he couldn't join us this week. But I hope to have not the coronavirus. If it's the coronavirus, I should be worried, and I'll tell you why when we go off air. But but next week, I hope to have Eddie LeBron as a one-on-one, as a bit of a follow-up to sort of post-mortem all this for all of us. Next time you will see Lou is at PAX East. He will be going there in 2 weeks. He will be bringing the video team with him. And we will have a special edition of the final the week after, the first week of March. And then the next time you will see Noah, if he doesn't write something for TSSZnews.com, is at South by Southwest, which I think we can all agree, gentlemen, all eyes are now on what the next step is for Sonic at South by. I would not be shocked if they announced a new television series at South by. So Noah, you better get your seat early.
Do what I can.
All right, terrific. All right, thank you everybody for joining us on what is going to be almost certainly a historic, no pun intended, game-changing weekend for the Sonic franchise. I hope to see you either next week or in March. Good night and good luck.